Now live and recording. Welcome. Welcome as you come in. We see you coming in. Hi. We're going to take a few minutes to let our participants join. You can see the numbers go up. I'm excited. Okay, welcome. Just a reminder that this is the Flip the Script webinar. Happy African Women's Day. My name is Françoise. I'm the founder of Eyala and your host today. Thank you so much for being here. I think we're going to start. And yes, we are now also streaming live on Facebook. This is very serious today. So all right, welcome everybody. I am just going to remind everyone who is not speaking on the panel to please go on mute when you're not speaking, because we have our fabulous interpreter, Meryl, who is doing her best to keep this meeting bilingual. And she says she needs the best, purest sound to do her work. So hi everyone, welcome. My name is Françoise. I'm the founder of Eyala, which is a platform dedicated to elevating the voices of African feminists and also holding spaces of connection, learning, and sisterhood among African feminists. I'm so excited to have you all here today. I really don't take it, your time, your presence, I really don't take it for granted. Thank you so much for being here. I know it's a Friday, it's Friday afternoon, it's AIDS, and also there's a virus out there coming for us. So I know I really don't take it for granted. Thank you so much for being here. So yes, thank you and welcome to this webinar, Flip the Script, which is really the culmination of a week-long campaign that Eyala has led in partnership with our Dove partner, the Say Enough campaign from Oxfam. So let me tell you about both of us. Eyala, yes, as I said, is a platform that is both digital and in person, looking at caring, as elevating, celebrating African feminists. The Enough campaign is all about challenging the ways in which those harmful social norms and narratives about Africa, about women in general, are used to justify violence against women. So we decided to team up this week because of today, African Women's Day, and we both were quite frustrated that when we celebrate African women a day like today and really all year long, what we do is we don't celebrate all of them. There's many African women who are just excluded because of their bodies, their identities, their sexualities, the way they speak, the way they organize, who are not part of the celebration. That's why we decided to flip the scripts and celebrate women in Africa in all their diversity, all their multitude, and all their beauty. So, so we decided to have conversations because that's what Eyala does. We've had conversations all week with Rachael, who I will introduce much later, with Nana Darkoa and others, and it was fantastic, and we thought this is the culmination of all of that. I'm going to introduce our panelists just in a minute, but just give me a second to give you a few technical and non-technical ground rules. The first one is technical, is that this is a bilingual meeting, so please do use, if you need French, please use the interpretation button and click French. So I'm going to say this in French as well. Si vous écoutez en français et que vous avez besoin de l'interprétation de notre fabuleuse interprète Meryl.
If you are listening in French and that you need an interpretation from our
merci de cliquer sur le bouton interprétation et choisir français.
Please click on the interpretation button and choose French. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going back to English, Meryl. Thank you so much. And apart from that, I also wanted to say, please use the chat function to tell us where you are coming from, say hello, say what you're thinking, and also ask any questions that you have for the panel. The second ground rule is this place, this virtual room is a safe space. That means that we are all here because we want to celebrate all African women. There's no room in here for transphobia, homophobia, queerphobia, ableism, racism, anything. If you're bringing in this to your room, please go home. It's okay. If you come here, we are hoping that you are coming here with an open mind and open heart, because this is the spirit of this place. And this is going to be moderated very, very, very carefully. You are welcome here. So let me introduce you to our panelists. Let me start with Souad. Souad Douibi from Algeria. Hi, Souad. I'm going to let you let all of you introduce yourselves later, but I just want to say why I'm excited you're here. I'm excited you're here because I talk to a lot of African activists all the time, and few of them bring the power of art. And you have done so in such magnificent ways. I can't wait for you to help us do that. I know that you will be speaking in French, and also Merit will be able to do that. Rachael, hi, from Kenya. I'm so excited you're here. Rachael is also going to introduce herself later, but what I love and why I really am excited she's here is that she works in those areas where, you know, where the women we often talk about serving are. But we say we serve them, we don't often celebrate them. So she works in informal settlements in Kenya, and she's doing amazing work and giving us great lessons about grassroots organizing. So thank you so much for being here. Cleopatra Kambugu from Uganda. He's a transgender woman and advocates for the rights of sexual minorities and sex workers in Africa, in East Africa in particular. I'm super excited you are here because I have only heard magnificent things about you and your powerful kind of approach to your work. So thank you so much for being here. And Nana Darkoa Sekyiamah from Ghana. Woo, I don't want to say this out loud, but her work has done wonders for me and my sexuality. Thank you so much for empowering me with your blog and your writing. Please, I know you're going to also introduce yourself. I just wanted to flag that Dr Tlaleng Mokofeng from South Africa is going to join us in about 5 minutes. She had an emergency, but I hope she's able to join us. So yes, we're going to talk, and I'm going to ask all of you panelists to introduce yourselves as I'm asking you this first question. As you know, today we're talking about flipping the scripts for African women. And so I wanted to ask you first to introduce yourselves, but also as you do it, tell us how you disrupt the harmful narratives and social norms through your work, your art, and just the way you live your life. Should we start with you, Rachael?
Thank you, sisters, and happy International Women's Day, African women, to all of you, and also queer folks and LGBTQ folks. My name is Rachael Mwikwali. I'm a feminist activist, proudly feminist active, and unapologetically feminist. And I convene a social movement of grassroots activists, community organizers, and act in general, also feminists in terms of organizing. It's called the Coalition for Grassroots Human Rights Defenders. We are based in Mathare Informal Settlement, which is the second largest informal settlement in Kenya. And our members organize organically based within their community that they live, both in informal settlement in rural areas. And the reason also why also our movement is in terms of feminist analysis and also organizing is because as a person, I felt as much as we're into these human rights spaces, as much as we're fighting with patriarchy outside, there's also patriarchy within the space. And in terms of a person flipping the script, is being a young woman in informal settlements, where also like as much as we have a very progressive constitution, which in Kenya, it does not work for us as people living in informal settlements and women and young women. So my own politics being a feminist that one, changing the patriarchal system that women can't talk in public space, and the thing of normalizing violence against women and girls. For me, I'm very like clear on that. We cannot entertain such retrogressive and injustice that happen towards women. And then also my choice to be who I am without being unapologetically. The fact also I exist as a feminist and as a woman. I want also to have my choice to have sex with whoever I want. Consensual sex with whoever I want, and not being asked a lot of questions. And also I'm happy Nana, she's here. I've been following also a lot of her work. Because also there's that part also like where you're an activist and also a women human rights defender. People like sort of think you cannot even have sex. I want to have sex. Meaningful sex, not just sex. Meaningful. And also the fact that even like based on the campaign that last time when it went off, which also apologized to the other sisters, the fact we ran a campaign called Pussy Power. For me, when I say Pussy Power, it's very liberating. And seeing that I disrupt spaces, when I say Pussy Power with my colleagues, it feels very empowering that I can be open about the way I exist and not feeling I have to explain to anybody about how I exist. And the fact also being a young activist and feminist organizing in this space in Kenya, and being able also like to be very vocal when it comes also to choice and rights, and also at the same time spaces. How do we create spaces? And also like how do we ensure like we build a movement where there's people, women, which are not homogeneous, we expect to be who we are. It doesn't matter if you speak English. It doesn't matter if you went to which school or not school, but the fact you exist as a woman or an LGBTQ person can speak for yourself. So I'll just do a brief of that and then the rest can continue. Thank you.
Yes, please. I want to hear more about some of those things. Thank you so much. Let me talk to you, Souad. Can you tell us more about you and who you are, where you come from, and especially how you flip the script on harmful narratives?
Alors, c'est Souad Douibi, je suis artiste plasticienne. En même temps, je suis en fait un professeur vacataire d'art-thérapie. Et en parallèle de tout ça, je fais aussi l'art de la performance. Et avec ça, que je me suis imposée dans la vie sociale algérienne. Je fais aussi des activités culturelles et des événements culturels pour le grand public, donc des espaces urbains. Donc, cette expérience m'a donné cette chance de fréquenter plusieurs mentalités. Et jusqu'aujourd'hui, je travaille dans le but de briser les barrières entre les gens et entre les populations aussi. Parce qu'en fait, en regroupant plusieurs mentalités dans le même space, dans le même espace, je trouve qu'il y a vraiment une division entre les gens. Genre, c'est comme en Afrique, on a cette tendance à nommer l'Afrique du Nord, l'Afrique centrale, l'Afrique subsaharienne. C'est comme une division culturelle pour l'Afrique aussi. En fait, moi, mon but dans mon travail, c'est capter l'intérieur humain pour qu'on puisse vraiment sortir avec quelque chose de solide, parce qu'on a tendance à oublier d'où on vient, et on a tendance aussi à oublier qui nous sommes. Voilà.
Merci beaucoup, Souad. Et d'ailleurs, c'est super intéressant ce que tu dis. Tu parles de reconnaître comment on est pluriel. Et effectivement, en français, le hashtag qu'on a choisi pour cette campagne, c'est africaine et plurielle. Et toi, tu permets vraiment de montrer ça. Ok, je repars sur mon anglais, excusez-moi. Let me welcome first Dr. Tlaleng Mokofeng. Hi, thanks for joining us. We're just doing introductions, so I'm going to go to you last so you can go in there, you can get in the groove. But thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited you're here. Let me turn to you, Cleo. Can you tell us a little bit for introduction about who you are, where you come from, and how you flip the script on social norms? Cleo, I think you need to go on unmute yourself.
All right, sorry, I hadn't really heard my name. Thank you so much, Françoise. My name is Cleopatra Kambugu, and I'm calling in from Uganda. So, hi, all East Africans. I am the director of programs of Uhai Issue, and Uhai Issue is an fund that's based in Nairobi and works in LGBTQ and sex organizing in the region. And this is already most countries do criminalize the communities that we do work in, and that means that they can't access the kind of basic needs that an uncriminalized African would be able to access in these countries. For us, flipping that as Uhai is when we were formed 10 years ago, it wasn't fun. So it wasn't, it was such an oxymoron, one, to be a funder, because usually money is given to us. We are not the givers of that money. So us being an African funder in and of itself, or the flipping of that script about how philanthropy does look like, because it normally happens from the global north to the global south. And beyond that, the fund, in terms of how we do make grants, those grants are made by our activists, because we are an activist fund, and that's not usually how things do look like. Usually the world of work and the world of where money comes from happening, which is normal, but it's very stupid, because you would think that the world of where work does happen should be the world of where the determining of where that money goes then ends up being. And so 10 years later, it almost seems like a normal thing for people to speak about participatory grant making, where activists do make final decisions, non-advice, but final decisions about how the work that needs to happen gets to happen. That wasn't the case a long time ago. Uhai is led by the kind of women that would define in that spaces performing leadership, that is LGBTIQ and sex workers. These are women in which in other African spaces, even as we speak Africa, do not have space as Africans on this continent, let alone power. And so that's a flipping of that script in and of itself. Personally, I'm a transgender activist, and my flipping of that script is in so many ways, but I'll just speak about one story. I am so many things. I didn't intend to be an activist. No, that wasn't my calling. My background is in the sciences. I'm a molecular biologist. But 8 years ago, when it was
une éducation dans le domaine des sciences. Mais pour moi, c'était trop.
That was a flipping script from I all know. 8 years ago, we did have an anti-homosexuality act in Uganda that meant that it was illegal to be gay, and that if you had family that didn't report anyone for being gay, then they would be criminalized as well. And that was a reality back then. And that moved me to film, and so I've told a film. It moved me to go on YouTube, and if you go on YouTube and say, I need to tell this story. Who is crazy enough to tell this story somewhere? But I want you to tell this story in ways that don't reduce me to a subject, but allow me to participate in the telling of this narrative. And that's very important for me because, and in 2013, in a time when we didn't have pause and disclosure and amazing ways in which trans is being told, let alone African stories, because they're always told through victimhood and apathy, and so this push to like a kind of different story. And I was like, oh hell no, I would like you to tell a story that goes beyond a singular narrative, because trans narratives and singular narratives, trans narrative, like any women's narrative, are really narratives. I think they can happen from a very nuanced perspective. And so it was a telling of a story about something that reveals humanity and love. And this is in a time of when we're having a bill that's hanging above our head. I'm like, no, I think we can tell so many stories, but I would like to tell a story that my mother can watch and Ugandans can appreciate, and a story that speaks of and translates in its fullness. Honestly, this film to go anywhere beyond a film that just challenges the law and it's thinking differently and starts some conversation, but it ended up going anywhere, ended up being on Netflix. And so people do know me in those spaces. 23-year-old Cleo did not intend to be on Netflix. I wanted to just solve issues of food security in Uganda, and my country was like, no, we don't think that you being trans, you should contribute to our food. But I'm like, okay, that's very crazy, it's stupid. Why can't I? Because I can't, do there's been so many flipping of that script. One, I'll tell my story even if it's difficult for it to be told. I'll tell it the way I want it to be told. I'll find love. And so for a long time I found love because trans bodies usually shouldn't be loved, right? It shouldn't be possible for trans bodies to be loved. But the biggest flipping of that script for me is in 2018 when my passport expired and I had to go back to my country. And that meant that I need to renew my passport, and I look like this, and my gender marker was male, and my country has never given a gender marker to a trans person. We have a law that says that in 21 you can't change your gender marker, and that's because they do know that there are trans people who can undergo sexual reassignment surgeries to be able to change their gender markers. And so I went back to my country really scared, like I could lose this. And that didn't happen because long story short, I was able to become the first Ugandan to be able to change their gender marker from male to female. And that sets up very many other trans people to be able to do this, to be able to change their gender markers for themselves. That's a huge thing. And altruism in other spaces on my social media. And people ask me, why are you courageous? Why are you all these things? No, I'm not. The world throws you what it throws you, and you figure it out. We're all adulting as you are. I would have loved a simpler life, but here we are, all of us, figuring out how we can adult and woman on this continent.
Exactly.
The script.
Thank you so much. That's a lot of flipping the script. Thank you so much for showing the way for so many of us. Let me move on to you, Nana. So welcome, really, really welcome. I want to hear also a little bit about you and how you are flipping the script. I'm giving you a bit of time because I see in the way you're you're already answering my next question, so I'm just going to drop that one. Let's continue. Let's continue. And please tell us a bit about you and how you flip the script.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nana Darkoa Sekyiamah. I'm from Ghana. I'm also a very proud African feminist and delighted to be in conversation with you all. I mean, it's kind of hard for me to say how I flip the script because I'm just like, oh my God, especially after listening to everybody else. I'm like, I'm just kind of trying to turn over the paper, rather gently. But I think the way in which I flip the script is really through trying to live my African feminist values and really trying to be true to myself and really trying to listen to myself and to resist the urge to just follow what my society says is the norm. And we know that, as an African woman, just doing that alone can be very transgressive, can be radical. And I guess the ways in which most people will say, I have flipped the scripts the most is in some of the spaces I have co-created. So in 2009, myself and my best friend, Malika Grant, started a blog called Adventures from the Bedrooms of African Women, where we shared our own personal experiences of sex, sexuality, pleasure, relationships, and encouraged other African women to do so. And so 11 years down the line, the site is a huge site, which a lot of people tell me has influenced them to think positively about their sexuality, to figure out their sexuality, to be able to have difficult conversations with their partners. It's inspired other platforms, to also create similar platforms for particular marginalized communities. We now have a festival as part of Adventures where in Accra last year, we had a one-day festival speaking about sex and sexuality. And this is in a context where the government tried to introduce comprehensive sex education and people were like, oh no, that's the gateway to, encouraging homosexuality. But in our one day conference, we had people of all sexualities, and I feel like we proudly had about 80% of people who were queer, including trans people as speakers, including trans people as part of our working group. So for us, flipping the script is really just trying to do what we consider to be right, to create space for African women of all identities to speak about sexuality, to speak about sex, to speak about pleasure, because we believe that our bodies are our first home, and if you don't own your body, what can you own? I am also a writer. I have a book called The Sex Lives of African Women, which will be published next year by Dialogue Books. And I am currently working on a podcast with my friend Malaika again, so I will soon be a podcaster. I'm also the Director of Communications and Tactics with the Association for Women's Rights and Development, AWID. I am currently on parental leave. And I think that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's a great nutshell. Thank you. I really appreciate what you're saying about flipping the script. The script is simply doing what we believe is right, and that really hit the mark for me. And last but not least, Dr. Tlaleng Mokofeng, welcome. Thanks for joining us. I'm so excited you're here because we had a fantastic interview, one of the highlights of my last year. And now you are here. And I realized I don't think we've ever been face to face, even behind the screens. So welcome, I'm excited. Please tell us a little bit about how fabulous you are and how you flipped the script.
Oh, thank you. It's so lovely to be here. And I'm just sitting thinking here, look at all these beautiful beautiful Black women, surviving a pandemic. And I think that's just firstly one of the things that we are all doing really well on flipping the script, right? We are here, we are alive, and we are trying to do so much with what is happening around us. And I think to recognize that, we're trying to do the utmost at a very tough time. And for me, it didn't always turn out to want to be the Dr. Sex or the sex doctor, but it has happened, and it's wonderful, And I got to this place because I was a young person myself, although I was a medical student. I was in my early 20s, and I needed myself, someone to guide me and hold my hand, as I navigate life and relationships and sex and sexual pleasure and self-discovery and self-play. And I realized that there wasn't really enough out there that was really written with Black people in mind, specifically using our own cultural references and geographical references, and really just affirming the fact that we have a right to pleasurable experiences. I was very annoyed, even in medical school, about how biomedical sex was made, right? And then because of the HIV epidemic, there was a lot of communications that was, produced in terms of content for young people. And I felt, but if no one is telling me to not have sex and therefore prevent HIV, no one was talking to me as a Black young woman. And I felt that deficit deep in my soul. I really felt it. And one of the things that was happening at the time is, of course, then you discover, right, power dynamics. You discover what it's like to be a young Black professional in the workplace. You discover that patriarchy is everywhere. The fact that you are a doctor and a medical degree doesn't mean that people will believe that you are the doctor, right? They will still walk up to you and say, but where's the doctor? With your stethoscope and everything around you. So just being a Black woman that looks like me every single day, whether I like it or not, I'm flipping the script on so many things just by being me. And I think I want to share that, because I think we and I suppose it is part of sort of pop culture and how things just are, but there is a lot to be said about how Black people and Black women particularly have to perform a certain role for them to earn respect, or to be a perfect, gender-based violence victim before people believe you that you could be violated, or that you have to be magic, right, before you are celebrated. And I'm just saying that every single way, whether you are a mom, at home, assisting with children, doing whatever you need to do to keep your home together, or you're a professional woman who's navigating really toxic corporate, capitalist systems, or, like people like myself who are healthcare provider, who are also fighting the patriarchy and the racism and the sexism of medicine, right, as a science. All of those things are important. And in a nutshell, though, the other side is that, you know, Black joy is radical. Black joy is political, because so much about who we are is about control, is about taking away our joy. And part, for me as a Black woman, part of taking my joy is having a better relationship with my body, is knowing and being affirmed that I can have sexual pleasure, and my body is mine to give me pleasure first, and sex is not something that's done to me. And that's how I got to actually write the book that I wrote, because of that, because I felt that there's a book out there, you know, like Toni Morrison says, if there's a book you want to read, write it yourself. And that's literally what I did. And may she rest in peace. She actually passed on a day before my book launch. And it was like, you know, an amazing, incredible moment. But I mean, if we can look at this now, you know, to have a Black woman who's not thin, with a big afro, you know, on a front page talking about sex and pleasure, I can't think of a bigger way to flip a script on everything that we are told or expected of us as Black women, as Black bodies, as people with uteruses, as people without, as transgender women. All of those is that we are put in boxes. And so mine is to say and acknowledge everyone and say we are all magic in whatever form or manner that we present to the world, and that everything else is about ensuring that our rights are protected, that we can thrive as Black women. Thank you, Françoise.
Thank you so much. And as we thought you could not flip the script any further, you were appointed recently the United Nations Special Rapporteur for Health. And I was like, oh, yes. This is congratulations. I'm so excited.
Thank you.
I'm so excited that you because of everything you just said, that you are in those spaces and that you're just going to, I don't think this is flipping the script. You're just going to turn the whole thing on its head, and I'm so here for it. Congratulations. Well, thank you so much for explaining. What I'm really taking away from all of this is that all of what you're saying is that we are just being ourselves fully. We're just being ourselves, and we don't necessarily set out to be amazing. We're just sticking with who we are and preserving and protecting it and making space for others like us to just be who we are. And that's a really strong message that I'm hearing from all of you. I think it's very strong because, as Tlaleng said, we are put in boxes. And the narratives that we are hearing about African women every day, but especially on days like Day of the African Woman or International Women's Day in March, those are the days when we celebrate, we show, we see in the papers, in the ads, only like a certain type of African woman. And the issue with those narratives, the way we see it, we being like myself, certainly, but also with our partner, the Enough campaign, we just had such frustration about the fact that not only are those narratives and norms exclusionary, they're actually dangerous, because many of those narratives and norms are used to justify and perpetuate violence against women. So I wanted to go there a little bit with you briefly, because I have more questions coming, and I also want to make sure we have time to discuss with the audience. But I wanted to ask you if you could zoom in on the one narrative or norm that you are particularly worried about in terms of how it affects the safety of African women. And just briefly, like, what is it? Why does it matter so much to you? And is there one thing that you're really pushing hard, and how you're doing so? Who wants to start? If nobody wants to start, I'm going to volunteer somebody. I'm the moderator, right?
Françoise,
happy to start, Françoise. Oh, Souad, go first.
Non, je voulais juste écouter la question en français, si c'est possible.
Bien sûr. Alors, je vais poser la question en français. Souad, je disais que...
So the speaker is repeating the question in French.
OK. Ce que je disais, Souad, c'est que qui est sorti très clairement de tout ce que vous avez dit, toutes les ces 5, pardon, c'est que, en fait, vous n'essayez pas de vous affirmer ou d'être des personnes badass ou tout ça. En fait, tout ce que vous dites, c'est vous essayez juste de vous affirmer tel que vous êtes. Et c'est particulièrement important parce que de plus en plus, on voit des stéréotypes sur la femme africaine et des normes sociales qui sont pas seulement fausses et restrictives, mais qui sont en fait dangereuses pour les femmes. Et donc, je demandais à chacune de dire, est-ce qu'elles peuvent nous parler de, on sait qu'il y en a plusieurs, mais une en particulier que vous trouvez, une de ces normes sociales que vous trouvez particulièrement dangereuse, pourquoi? Et qu'est-ce que vous faites dans votre travail, dans votre art, ou même dans votre façon de vivre votre vie pour un peu changer les choses de ce point de vue-là?
En fait, c'est ça. À chaque fois, moi personnellement, je dis soyez vous-même. Si on est nous-mêmes, on arrive à transmettre notre esprit, notre.
So clearly, what I say is that we have to be ourselves. When you are yourself, you are free to express yourself. You are free to think the way you want. When I talk of African women, I'm talking about Northern Africa because the culture there is very different from the rest of Africa. So in our culture, we tend to ask a lot of submission from women. We tend to manipulate the women in our society, sometimes without even knowing it. And this comes from our education system because we believe that there's an education for girls and an education for boys. So for me, this is where the problem lies because there is a problem of balance between both. So when we do such, we give such education, how can we have a man in the future who will be able to respect women? Because when they are a child, when the person is still a boy, we don't teach the boy how to respect his mother, how to respect his sisters. And also, women are very to blame sometimes because they cannot educate a man as it should be. So they give what they have been taught. So we see that it's like the problem is being passed on from generation to generation. Now we also have the social aspect. You know, sometimes we have, we are free as women, we want to be rebellious, but most of the time we are compelled to accept the social restrictions. So whether she decides to accept things the way it is, or the other women, we just take her aside. So for me, I think it is very important for us to go out or to be in a relationship with a man. We can accept you as who you are as a woman and accept every part of you. This is what we need to have. And for me as Souad, when I did my performance, it was something that inspired me. I decided to go out in the streets and do that performance outside there. It was very important for me because it was very rare to see in my country, to see an artist to go outside there and perform in front of the public. There are other people there are some people who understood that there was a problem in the society if this woman has come out to express things like that. But other people were also thought that I was a witch, I was having a problem in my mind. But I really stood firm. And I think that as an artist, is to be very silent sometimes. This is because people becomes very curious. They have a lot of questions. They do not understand clearly who you are as an artist and why do you do some actions. They do not get answers to satisfy their curiosity. So for me, I've moved from open communication, that is speech, to visual communication. So I decided to keep silence and express myself through the design, the art that I do in the streets of my neighborhood. And for me, this speaks louder than words.
lire des histoires dans les yeux des gens, des femmes.
And most of the time, when I do that, I see women and people passing by looking at my art. I see a story, I see what they want to tell me in their eyes. And I think that we are creating something in their being because we see that women want to speak, but maybe not all of them want to be wanted to be voiced. They want to express in another way. We have those who are scared, those who don't care about anything, they are fearless, and there are others like me who wants to show it through visual content. Thank you very much. I even wanted to ask you to give us more details about this performance that you did. It was a strong performance, and thank you very much.
Let me ask the same question about like which is of all the many narratives that we have to fight, which is the one that really you find is particularly dangerous for African women? Can I turn to you, Nana?
Yes, you can, Françoise. Thank you. Like you point out, there are so many dangerous, stereotypes and limited narratives about African women. But as somebody whose personal activism is a lot around sexuality, the one that I find the most limiting is the myth that homosexuality is un-African. And that's because it affects like so many other areas of women's lives and people's lives. So, within the Ghanaian context, for example, we saw last year that a far-right civil society organization, the World Congress of Families, held its first Africa Regional Conference here. And as part of that work, had far-right civil society leaders in Ghana basically lobbying politicians in Ghana to say, do not agree for there to be comprehensive sex education taught in schools, right? And that's because they don't want young people to actually get educated about sexuality. And what they do is create a lot of fear-mongering. And they did this deliberately in a pre-election year, wanting to influence the current government. And they were successful. So even though the Ministry of Education was championing comprehensive sex education, suddenly the initiative stalled and now nothing is really happening around that. And for me, that's really dangerous because we live in a country where every time you open the newspaper, you read about young girls being defiled. That's the word that they tend to use in Ghana. And nobody's questioning this, nothing is being done around it. And for me, the solution to all of this violence is actually education. It's also appreciating and recognizing that our sexualities are on a spectrum, our sexualities are diverse. Homosexuality is African. Being homophobic is what is un-African, and we ourselves need to go back into our past and understand and recognize gender and sexuality as fluid and dynamic and sometimes constantly changing. And for me, that's really harmful. And we see this in other areas of life. If we see when women are running for public office, I think that most people start to question is her sexuality, her status, whether she's single, whether she's married. And so you see how, this attempt to control women's bodies and people's bodies just affects every single area of one's life. Yes, and I'm reading Victoria's comment. Yes, and we know the World Congress of Families is a global organization.
Yeah, it's a global organization. Victoria is telling us, yes, it's also behind homophobic laws in Russia. And Victoria is saying sexual education is a power. That's why they're trying to stop it. I think that's a good way to explain what's going on. Let me ask you, Tlaleng, if you want to also share about like what you feel is the most dangerous for African women in terms of harmful social norms and narratives.
I think what's mostly the problem is that a lot of the programs on sexual and reproductive health, rights and information is funded by foreign aid, global health aid. And governments in Africa don't set their own agenda on anything. Economics, minerals, wealth, land, doesn't matter what it is. And historically, the bodies of women have been the site of politics. Our lives are political. Whether we do anything about it, that's in an individual choice. But that our lives are political is a fact. And the reason why there's a lot of this right-wing extremism, evangelical rise in Africa, is because they have money. And they give money to our African governments. And that's really what is happening. And it's happening in South Africa, it's happening in all the other countries on the African continent, where particularly our right to be fertile and to reproduce, our autonomy and the right to make decisions about our own body, is a right that is controlled by the state. And because of that control, because of that power, because of the economic power, the politics and the patriarchy and the paternalism that we live with in society gets enhanced. And I've often said in different spaces where I've had to defend why comprehensive sexuality education is a life skill, right? All parents understand that if a child is going to drive a car, they need to know the rules of the road. They need to know how to keep themselves safe in a car. They need to know how to check that their car is well for be driven on the road. They need to know about defensive driving. It's a life skill. So knowing how consent works, it's a life skill. But these perverted adults would rather have children grow up not knowing that their bodies are theirs. They would rather have children doubting always their inner signal that tells them when things are wrong, right? They teach children not to listen to that and depend perpetually on these perverted adults to give them permission to be who they are. How many people force children to give hugs or kiss older people who visit homes? And when a child says no, everyone takes offense. And you forget that children are humans who know what they want to do with their bodies, and they must be respected as such. So the issues of consent, issues of healthy sexual lives, knowing how to use a condom, knowing how your body works in terms of menstruation, vaginal health, it helps a lot. And those are important skills. There's nothing un-African about dignified care. There's nothing un-African about respecting that people can love who they want to love. There's nothing un-African about accepting that the person who is pregnant has a right to decide on what pregnancy outcome that they want. Even the romanticization of motherhood is a big problem, right? That you can be all of these things you are and be successful, but if you don't have a husband to validate your existence as a woman, and not only do you then need that husband, you still need to produce children to prove how fertile you are. All of those things are designed to suffocate us and to keep us in a certain way. And unfortunately, patriarchy and all the different systems of oppression punish anyone who dares to speak out.
Thank you
and
so
it's
much.
in that punishment that they know to, to force us into little corners.
Yeah, it's so interesting because thank you so much for all of this. I think it's particularly interesting what you're saying, how you're closing this about on like when we punish for speaking out, and we punish in so many ways. And I think many of us, Souad was just telling about like how she was out just performing silently, but just being in the public space and being treated like being insulted just for writing the word woman on the street and just existing is, existing as fully yourself, you're punished just for that. That's quite, thank you for pointing that out. Cleo, are you still with us? We can't see you, although we can see your beautiful face. Can I ask you same question? I think I want to take time with this because this is really the core of what we're talking about. Can you give us briefly your take on what you think is the most dangerous narrative that we need to flip the script on?
Yeah. The previous guys really touched on everything. I don't know what else to speak about, but I think the biggest lie we've ever been told. Okay, and I would break it into two. I have a problem with that, with gender. The word gender as an identifier, it has been used. And this is because I don't think the word gender was made for us as women. I think the word gender was made to actually manage our aspirations and our expectations and just control what we can be. And so as a trans person, when I've been in spaces or when I've read pieces about that speak about trans women and stuff like that. I've reached a place in my journey where I'm like, why am I holding onto this thing that actually wasn't made for me in mind in the first place, you know? Because when and I speak about this in different spaces, and I speak about the fact that as a trans woman, I don't claim cis womanhood because I know my lived reality isn't that of a cis woman. I don't claim trans womanhood because I do not trans women realities are non-relatable, they are diverse. And so for me, I feel that the most difficult narrative that has been sold to us, even as I transition, because then I start asking when I transition, like, what is womanhood? What is proper womanhood? Is that there is something such as proper womanhood and proper African womanhood. And I express that so clearly because I've walked this continent wearing a different body that held different privileges of manhood before. And I'm walking this continent with a different body that looks this way. And the expectations that I've had as I've realized my professional journey, my academic journey, and my personal journey. And one of the things, this is what womanhood can be, and this is what womanhood cannot be. And the challenges of what I can aspire to and what is too much to aspire to, what I speak about. And these are known things that, these are these regulations before. Like before transition, I never had someone you work out the PM, or you need to have a longer skirt so that you don't get raped, or you can't speak too much because that's not right, or you can't have an orgasm. My biggest worry, and I speak about this to my colleagues when I had my surgery, was how am I going to have an orgasm? And this is I speak about this because even as a biologist, there's been so much literature around sex and sexuality, and I cruised through it. Most of it was binary, and most of it focused on pleasure as it's something that is required of women to give men, not women to achieve. And I was baffled. I'm like, I was 27. I'm like, okay, if it's 27, the last year I'm ever going to have an orgasm, okay. Cleo, nice decision you made. And that was scary for me. And so for me, part of flipping the script, but also speaking about narratives that have been sold to us is gender. Gender is so important. This gender wasn't made for us to start with in the first place, or like there's something as proper womanhood. And so I talk about this narrative of proper womanhood is that it's used by women to speak of other women as not being good enough in cases. And this isn't a conversation about trans women being woman enough. This is a conversation about, oh, if you're a sex worker, you're not a proper woman. On the continent for as long as this continent has been. Or like, I remember speaking to my friend, like, how do I self-gratify? And I'm like, self-gratify? I'm like, what do you mean women don't self-gratify? Isn't that something that allows women to self-gratify? And they're like, no, it's not womanly. I'm like, what do you mean? And that was a shock for me to be told that I can't. And that I can't because I'm a woman. Or being in spaces I did sciences. Or I sat in my lecture room in my first year before I transitioned as a different person. And when I went through my transitioning in my second year, I looked different. And I experienced how I was second, not because I spoke things differently. No, I wore a different body. And that body wasn't allowed to be as intelligent as it should be, not allowed to be as expressive as it should be. It was supposed to be second-hand. And so for me, those two things that everyone has spoken about, the policing of women's bodies, the fact that the reproductive responsibility of this continent lays on body, be it family planning, or be it the ability to give. And so hearing things like, you aren't woman because you can't be like, no. no, I don't think that women are made as vessels to procreate only. I think there are other things that women can aspire to. Or even right now, being a 34-year-old spinster, because I broke up with my partner, is having my mother and my aunties and everyone coming to say, we have to figure this out. We have there's nothing to sort out. I can be a sole person, and that's fine. I mean, I'm happy that you can think of me being in a relationship with a man, because I'm heterosexual. But the fact that things can me be a full human being if I choose to take on a man. And that it's not right for me to be 34 and be a spinster. So it's really all these things that are weaved in. But most difficult for me is that these are things that we believe as women, and we push. That for me is really, really scary for me.
Yeah, it's interesting what you're saying also about like what we know or we don't see is dangerous and we internalize. It's also something that you're pointing out. Thank you about that for pointing that out. Rachel, turning to you now. If you can tell us also like, if you can also zoom in on one of the, I know there are many. I think it's a hard question I'm asking, I'm realizing. I'm sorry. But if you can zoom in on one and tell us what you think is particularly dangerous and why.
Like for myself, I'll go with the one, the myth that we need to sort of change, that the men are the head and they're always right. And I'm also like wanting to kind of link it with religion aspects. With all the due respect of sisters that are very religious, I respect that. But the fact that when you talk about the man being the head or the boys, because I'm looking in terms of also it shrinks our girls also taking up even leadership and being themselves in school, and even when you grow up being just a woman on your own. The fact that identity politics, you find most of the time, like I want to bring it back to the level I am in, and most of you also the space you work. There's usually that part of identity that is taken away from us because the man is head, in quote. You find in a community, people not know maybe I'm Rachael Mwikwali, but they know I'm a mother of so, married to so and so. And not Rachel, the identity of a person. And this one also happened to me. And there was a case in our community that was a violence against women that was, a guy wanted to stab him, who was the partner. And then a neighbor came to sort of support to help her not to be stabbed. And then the neighbor was stabbed and he died. And then finding the name of this woman to a police station was really crazy because the society is used to know as the mother of so-and-so. And you look in terms of ID, you're not called the mother of so-and-so. When it comes to your original paper, your original document, it's Rachael Mwikwali, not the wife of so or the mother of so. And then looking in terms of the way I say the man is always, the narrative, the man is always the head, is now also like is usually used when it comes to violence against women to be normalized. Because they're like, he loves you. So he's always right. You should come low, you should not make noise as much as you're problematic as Rachel myself. They're like, you're the one who's the problem, it's not the problem. And you wanna like, but also as we see you men as problem, but we don't beat you. We see you like men as not listening, but we don't kill you. We don't force you to have sex. As women, we're usually in that point of let's have consent, let's talk, let's discuss. And now it comes back also to the pleasure part of it. For a man, when they're having sex, for them, when they release, it's fine, but they don't even consider, as a person, I need to have pleasure. And pleasure also is political. Like, I need also to feel like I've had meaningful sex and I've enjoyed, not only for procreation, but I've enjoyed. And also like coming back to the head is also how our African countries are being led by male. Like most governments who are the president, they're the male. And look on how they have responded to COVID-19. Who are victims? We are victims because they don't look at it on a gender justice lens. They don't look at it on a feminist lens. That's why they have ended up making curfews that also like lock us with violent partners or violent relative in the homes. That's why we have seen cases of violence against women going high. And not putting our need into also to the essential part of supply. So you find a lot of women are being abused, but there is nowhere to go. Government hasn't put enough safe houses for women to go. But because the men are always the head, we should not question that. We should resist that. And that's why, like, for me, I'm really happy seeing a lot of also activists even within the grassroots community and feminists taking action to a point of also like pushing so hard, even for the most of our governments, to know the men are not always the heads. Most families also are run by women. And that's also like coming to debunk the word, they're always the head. Look, even when it comes to liberation of this, most of our African countries, women have been playing a very critical point, ensuring even the men are safe, ensuring like the independence is being energized and recharged. For example, like the struggle of South Africa, the role Winnie played, but because the late Mandela was there, they ended up like victimizing Winnie, not victimizing Mandela, which is not right. And also as a Black woman, as a Black feminist organizing, I resist that. Men are not usually the head, and men are not the head, and men are not always right. See, our African countries are run, they're not right.
And it's really interesting what you're also saying about how you're contextualizing this with the COVID crisis. So I live in Morocco, and I find it really interesting. During the crisis, the government issued some like a card to help families sustain, but it was given to the man, even when the man was not technically the person who was running the family. So it's really interesting how you're saying like the conception that the man is the head. It permeates even the way our countries are governed. Definitely true. All right, so I wanted to for us to look in the mirror as well as activists, especially feminist activists, but not only. I think in the spaces where we organize. And I'm saying this, I need to say this first, because I think most of us in this conversation identify as feminists, but it's not necessarily the case. So I remember that I had to tell Souad what I believe my conception is feminism is, so she could come. Thank you for being here. But I remember she was like, I'm not sure I have I have a seat at this table because it's a feminist table. I don't identify as a feminist. And as I said to her, for me, feminism is about the action, not the label. So if you're doing the feminist work, or you can call it whatever, but if you're doing work for women, so when we talk about action for women, you should be at the table. So I'm going to use feminist in let's say like a wild, as I've said to my friend this once and she was laughing, but I said, for me, it's not a political party. So you don't need like the tag. If you're doing the work and you don't have the political card, as long as you're not going to be in the brigade of I'm not feminist and therefore I'm anti-feminist, then let's just talk. So I'm just prefacing what I'm going to ask for with this perspective. I was talking about looking at ourselves in the mirror, because as somebody who's been working in feminist organizing spaces for the past decade or so, I find very interesting that some of the things we are criticizing in society, we tend to replicate sometimes. And I've seen it, and we've had fantastic conversations all week, including with young Francophone in West Africa, activists who organize in a very different way, online, using satirical ways of using irony, or others, using storytelling. And we found that there's an officially recognized way of African women organizing, which I think is there. So you have to be an NGO, this kind of NGO, this kind of head of NGO, all of these things. So I wanted to ask you about that. How have you, is that something that you've experienced? And I mean it very honestly, being on both sides, found yourself being excluded, the kind of organizing you have, not having its space in the entire official way of organizing, or find yourself excluding just because that's just, you find yourself replicating. Can we talk a little bit about that? So I'm going to ask you specifically if there's, I'm going to start with you, Rachael, because I know we have discussed that during the week on Instagram Live, and you were talking about how, as somebody who organizes in the community at the grassroots, you don't always have a seat at the big table. Can you tell me a bit about that, and how do we flip the script on that as well?
So should I go ahead? Okay, super. So one, I think also this is something as a movement, we need to have like a confession with ourselves, not testimony. Confession, because with confession, you're very honest. You're like, I'm willing to sit on a hot seat and also like see what I've been doing wrong to make it better. One, the class politics within the movement. And when I say class politics is what type of English do you speak? What type of connection do you have? But in reality, you don't need to know English to do women's rights work or to do feminist work. You only need your brain, your mind, your energy, and your just natural skills to say this is violation and I'm against it. So I think class politics play a very critical role. Also the level of education. If you don't have a PhD, because which also some have experienced. People are like, oh, because you don't have a PhD, you don't deserve this job. But when it comes to real work, they want you to do real work. The other thing is about exploiting of young feminist labor. They want you to work, but not to be paid. When you ask for payment of your labor, you're very selfish. And you young girl, you don't think the spirit of volunteerism. You're like, for heaven's sake, I've been volunteering in the last 28 years of my life, doing this work, not being paid, but also I have bills that I need to pay. So I think we need to be also very clear, even some of the women rights organizations that work also with feminists. Beyond just talking on policy, we work with feminists in the grassroots. Do you really like internalize what you believe in as values of feminism to practicality? Because we are very quick in accounting for patriarchal patriarchs, but are we also like quick in also holding ourselves into account? The other thing is about being locked in terms of when you speak the truth to power, when you're vocal, especially there's this thing I don't like, being called you young girl or baby girl. No, stop calling me young girl or baby girl. Because I think sometimes it weaponizes you and used against you to feel you are very privileged to be in that space or to exist in that space. And which is not right. Because as I come to a space, even the space I sit in, nowadays I'm very clear, you can call me as arrogant as I am, take me or leave it. But the fact exists as a person, I'm bringing something in this table. It's not a favor me existing in this table. It's because I believe in that cause and I'm coming also with a constituency. So if you don't do what our people want, sort yourself. And I think also we have to be clear, and in terms of all of us, we learn these things one step by step. So we should also be very accommodative when we ask in terms of also like women are not homogeneous, which I find it here in Kenya. Like when we did a campaign called just like ending femicide, we did it with a campaign, a girl who was murdered called Sharon Otieno. Do you know most of the women rights organizations didn't support us? Because what? It does not look sexy for them to fight on a case that this girl had a consensual relationship with a married man. It was a consensual relationship. But because they want soft things to look very proper in a Kenyan space as morals, as we don't have morals, and you forget what is moral to you might not be moral to me. So we shouldn't be policing in terms of moral. So for me, I felt like it's not inclusive. And even like if you look with Repeal 162 Kenya for the one that was taken by the LGBTQ community, most even human rights organizations didn't support it. They didn't go in support of either as allies or as supporter, even women rights organizations. The only few of us who went in terms of solidarity were called all sorts of things. But it's okay, but it's not okay. It's okay because when you do something good, you'll get resistance. But I think it's important, as much as you're talking about celebrating all African women, also let's rethink about the women who are living in informal settlements, the sex workers. Like we're not in one, like a cat, like a marking scheme, but we have to be inclusive in our politics and our space and how we create it. For women with disability, all of it, not just because this one speak proper English, this one knows this donor, this one can wear high heels, me I'm a tomboy, no.
Yeah, thank you. It's Iris is saying Rachael Mwikwali is dropping bars. Indeed. Let me maybe turn to, okay, I'm going to to ask you, because I want to make sure we answer some of the questions we have, and time is flying, which my mother always said, time always flies when you're in good company. So we are in great company and time is indeed flying, and we don't have so much time, but I would love to hear from one or two others of you on this very question of like looking in the mirror for the movement and making sure we also flip the script internally. Would any of you want to add to what Rachel has said? Tlaleng, please.
Yeah. I just want to talk about allyship, right? It's very important because Rachel was speaking about, migrant women and sex workers, right? And so many other people who have different identities. And I think whether you are an ally of any cause, it's important to talk about positionality, because there is certain power that all of us have at different spaces that we occupy. You may be in one instance, someone who is, again, like Rachel was saying, experiencing, the policing within the movement by older people, for example. And I could be someone who's, fully able-bodied and not really paying attention to other people in a different space who are differently abled, and not just about mobility aids, but like across the spectrum, right? And so if you're going to be an ally, you need to be constantly asking yourself, where does my power lie in this engagement, in this situation? Because we can, let me rather say it this way, we are born in these systems of oppression that we didn't create. And in order to live well and respectful of other people's human rights and then be an ally, you have to unlearn a lot of things that we ourselves learned to survive, learned as coping mechanisms, learned as a form of violence, whatever it is. In unlearning that, we then have to create these safer spaces where we can have the conversations when we are bringing each other closer together than apart. But we can't have these conversations if people are not willing to be honest about the power that they hold and that they bring in any given situation. And it's true about, the Global North movements who are grant makers, who are funding women on the African continent to work. Why can't funders fund us directly? Why do we need a white woman in America, in London, in wherever, to be the recipient of that money? And then there's still a lot that even within the movement we need to be honest about. And just a few weeks ago, we saw a lot of anonymous people on especially online, on Twitter, on social media, calling out some of the toxic nature of the international NGO spaces as well. And I think it's important because those politics often will impact how we get that money, why we get that money, the targets that are made for us, and the micromanaging and the microaggressions that we then as Black women tolerate so that we can get our projects funded. And it raises another question about why is it that our governments in Africa okay to expose women and the needs of SRHR to global funding and not much else, right? Why is it that our own governments cannot cater for our needs like they cater for all the other requirements in terms of health systems? So there is this imbalance of foreign aid, particularly around issues that impact women. And that economic power is important. Rachel was talking about organizing in the grassroots, right? They don't recognize African scholarship. They erase the work of Black women. They erase African indigenous health systems. And that erasure is in itself a form of violence. To restore dignity, to restore pride in people's humanity and who they are, you have to talk about all of these, uncomfortable situations. And if I come to Kenya on a program, I can't be happy that the ministry is giving me time, but not Rachel. I must ask Rachel, why is it that you are not heard? Because my default setting is one that knows and believes that Rachel knows exactly what's good for her community. She's done the work, but no one is hearing her. No one is bringing her to the table. And the question is why? So my job as an ally, coming into that community, into that space, I need to understand and step aside and say, well, look, I do have this appointment with the ministry. In fact, either you coming with and you taking over and you tell them exactly what needs to be told, as opposed to being pompous and being happy that I get an audience. And you know what I'm saying? So there is that power that lies in this work that we do.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I love what you're saying about like the space that we have, making sure we don't occupy it on our own. is one of the, I think, one of the very interesting strategies. And I think we can do it in all the spaces that we are in, the small meetings, the big meetings, making sure that we also plan for it, that we don't react every time and scramble to make it happen. But I think we can really plan for it. So thank you so much. I'm going to, I see two questions, but I wanted to very briefly ask Souad about, because Souad organizes outside of this world of NGOs, and she has this artist approach, and I wanted to ask you about that. What you think the role of artist is in, you know, because all of us, we agree, we work more or less differently, but in all of us here work with or in NGOs, but you don't. And how do you see the links? Like, what do you think needs to happen? Because many artists like you are doing amazing work. What do you think you need? We all need to do to connect the dots there.
Mhm. C'est vrai que j'appartiens pas aux ONG. Et j'essaie aussi d'être même indépendante dans ma vie d'artiste.
It is true that I don't belong to any NGO, and I'm even trying to be very independent as an artist. I don't want to be manipulated or controlled under the control of anyone. For me, art can change so many things. Art can put people together. Art can bring people together and also zoom on a certain situation in a society, a situation that we live as human beings. And for me, through art, we can tolerate so many subjects, some subjects that are considered as prohibited or taboo. Sometimes you are not allowed to express yourself openly on something, but with art, you can express it, project it, and show to everyone your point of view on that specific question. So for instance, if you take if you take a woman, and to say that recently I've started producing movies on women, and this is a project ongoing. So I've tried to record stories of women through a movie. And for me, this is also to share an emotion, an experience of another woman who live in another continent, perhaps even in Africa. So for me, it is a way of communicating. Most of the movies that we watch currently, I know everything, and it is very difficult to communicate. There is a lack of information between Africans. So from time to time, I feel very ostracized or put aside. When I was in Dakar, someone told me, "Oh, you are not an African. Are you an African?" So it is true that it was a joke, but I felt really bad. Even when I want to travel and I want to ask for a visa, sorry, they asked me, "Why do you want to go to Cote d'Ivoire? Why do you want to go to Cote d'Ivoire?" And they said, what do you want to do there? For them, for those people working in the embassies, there is no tourism in Africa. So they will suggest that you go abroad or go elsewhere. Therefore, for me, it is very important to hear the stories of all African women. So, what I've done, as I said, through movies, is to try and put together the story of women. Even if you cannot travel, you will see the stories of those women through the movies that I will make, through the performances, through the plots. You understand and know who are these women. And I'm sure that this can tell you a lot, even if you don't go yourself on in those countries. Yes, it's very important what you are doing, because currently with the pandemic that is going on, it's very important for us to know about different women and what they do. Thank you very much.
Alors, sorry, I'm going to stick to English now. I'm confusing, my brain is confused. Okay, so I know we have very little time left and I want to respect everybody's time, but I want to tell you the 3 questions that I've identified. Thank you for sharing the questions in the chat. So I'm going to read all 3 of them, and any of you can pick one and go a bit deeper in there. Somebody is asking, following what Dr. Mokofeng is saying, it seems that there is quiet but strong additional wave of neo-colonialism happening through evangelical churches or states with connections to them when it comes to LGBTQI rights, right to sex education, even knowing what menstruation is. How can we shed light on this pushback without worsening anti-women and anti-rights backlash? That's one question. I think Nana Darkoa, you were also mentioning that earlier. Another question that came in was from, sorry, I can't see the names because it's too small, but it was somebody from Harare. Sorry, I can't see your name. Who says, do you think there's been movement around issues of sexual orientation and abortion? I feel that these rights have been very tough to move forward on the continent. And the last question, it's not the last, sorry. New questions are coming in. Can some of you speak to dangerous scripts and social norms that they face specifically as Black African women specifically? And lastly, how can we straddle the intersectionalities as African women within migration? For example, the conflict within the home and African values of womanhood versus the opposing culture of the countries we live in. So this is somebody who's in London, but originally Egyptian Sudanese. So it's also the diaspora connection. I'm sorry I've dumped all of them at you at once. They're all in the chat, but I know we don't have much time. So if one of you can start addressing one of them, and then we can address them as we go. Who wants to start with what question? Whatever you feel comfortable.
Okay, so I'll just go first then on the first 2 questions. To say yes, there's definitely an increase of evangelical white imperialism, politics in Africa, and the problem is that it finds the fertile ground because of patriarchy, right? These politics that these people bring here, unfortunately, in this day and age, further entrench what already a lot of people believe about women. And that's why we can't trust the people in positions of power or in leadership in any of our countries to have our back, because they too believe those things about us, right? And they get bolder to talk about them because then there's economic gains from associating with those types of organizations and organizing. And of course, the issue of safe abortion access remains a big one. And I think it's important to locate that within a human rights discussion, because then you will realize that it's not about the abortion. It's about the fact that people have a right to sexual and reproductive health, regardless of why they need that. People have a right to dignified services, to confidential medical health care, and to quality health care. Those are human rights, regardless of what the procedure you need is. And to remove morality and judgment and religion from all of this health services, because again, it's about controlling what women can or cannot do. And I will leave time for other panelists to also just reply. But it is true, and it's harder to organize as individuals. That's why we need to form these cross-country movements and assist with each other, because I may not necessarily have every single skill I require to stand up. In some governments, women are literally thrown in jail. Yeah. Right? We are scared to organize physically in different countries because of that threat. So perhaps virtual organizing, it's actually maybe one of the silver linings about COVID, is that now we can sit across different countries as Black women and organize. And I think we should be more strategic and deliberate about these connections.
Thank you. That's a very strong point about also the risk we're seeing just in the past few weeks, women in Egypt, now women in Zimbabwe, you know, like being, receiving so much threat to their lives just for, and their freedom just for speaking for their rights. Cleo, Nana, Rachel, Souad, any of the other questions? Oh.
Go ahead, Nana, it's okay.
All right, Rachel. I wanted to jump in on the question that Nancy posed about movement around issues of sexual orientation and abortion. So in Ghana specifically, for me, part of what has really been heartwarming is to see an increased amount of organizing by, you know, LGBTQI people around their sexual rights. And for me, that's really been heartwarming, and like lots of spaces being created where people can be in community and to support one another. First of all, I think that's the most important thing. And there's so many groups in Ghana now doing that. There's LGBT Rights Ghana, those Drama Queens, there's the LBQ Collective, you know, and there are also feminist spaces like the Young Feminist Collective that are explicitly intersectional, especially around issues of sexuality. So I've seen a lot of movement by young people themselves. And that's great. When it comes to abortion, Ghana, for example, has one of the most comprehensive and actually accessible rights to abortion, but there's a high amount of stigma. And there's also a lot of misinformation. So people are commonly told abortion is illegal, which is actually not true, because in Ghana, abortion is legal under so many circumstances, including if the woman cannot afford to, you know, to have a baby, including if the woman could suffer any mental health issues. And she herself saying, you know, I'll be depressed if I have a child. But due to, I think, I think due to especially far right Christianity, there is this myth that's continuously, you know, propagated that abortion is illegal. And I've even had a doctor tell me that they, as doctors who actually provide abortion care to women, get stigmatized by other health professionals. I've been to a clinic myself and asked for the next day pill, and the doctor said to me, I cannot prescribe you the next day pill. Go to a pharmacy, you can get it to yourself, you know? And so you can imagine if I, as supposedly this middle class, educated woman who can go and speak plenty English to ask for next day pill, can be told, no, go to a pharmacy. You can just imagine what the situation will be like for lots of women who may not have the privileges that I have. So yes, you know, this is the Ghana specific context. I just wanted to share those examples.
Thank you for these specific examples. I remember when we did the interview with you, Dr. Tlaleng, and we talked about it, and you remember you telling me, well, tell these people they shouldn't be doctors, let them go to church and be pastors. And I think indeed, if your religion stops you from doing your job, you know, change your jobs, you know. And I remember you specifically saying that. I know we are almost at time. I see there are other questions. So I hope we will find ways. I'm going to note down all the questions. I'm so sorry. I want to respect everybody's time, because I know on a Friday evening in a pandemic on a day, I don't think it's right to take more of your time that we promised we would take. But I did want to first say thank you to everyone, and ask all of you to, in really one sentence, if I can ask all of you to do so, to tell us what is the advice that you would give to African women who either hesitate or struggle to flip the script on all the social norms that are pushing against her. Like in one sentence, can I start with you, Cleo?
I feel put on.
Want to think about it? I can ask somebody else.
Yeah, think about it.
Sure, no problem. So who's ready to start? One sentence, your advice.
Yeah, I just want to say that, I mean, women need to know that they are worthy of joy, and that their survival in this world is magic enough, and that it's not our fault. We didn't create these systems of oppression. And as much as everyone makes it, you know, on us to fix, but it's not our fault, and we are worthy of joy.
Thank you so much. That's a great message.
I can go next, though maybe also be direct on also what I wanted to say. Kenya, we are pushing a lot on right to access on abortion. There's different organizations, different movements, and also in LGBTQ, both in the ground and in the national level. But one thing I'll say in terms of advice, it's not like sort of advice, because also like it depends on how we are organizing. We all know one explanation why we exist in this continent as women, as LGBTQ folks. We are here to resist in any form of oppression that come to work against us as women and as girls. And feminists, we are here to stay. We are not going anywhere. We've been here. We are here to stay. And it's pussy power. The present is female, not the future. The present is female. So it's pussy power. And viva to all the African Black women who work day in and night to ensure we are fine. Viva. And power to you all.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Souad, would you like to share some advice?
Moi, je dirais à toutes les femmes africaines, soyez vous-même et allez juste...
Alors, I would tell all the African women, be yourself and believe in yourself, in your convictions. And also, the word women. Sorry, we lost the speaker.
On a été coupé, ça va? On t'entend? Ouais. Tu peux recommencer, s'il te plaît?
So this was a technical glitch. So as I was saying to all the African women, be yourself. Go to the end of your convictions, what you believe in. And you know, the word woman is a big fear to our society, to our politics. This is because women have a lot to say and women can change completely the world. We have given them the power for so many years now, especially in Africa. But now we want a united Africa, and women have their part to play. So I believe that in future we will not have barriers or borders in Africa. And I believe this is women who are going to achieve it.
Merci beaucoup, Souad. Who's next? One piece of advice, short and crisp. Nana, I see you're unmuted. Go for it.
My short and crisp advice is to find your people, find your community. No matter what your cause is, no matter what your passion is, there are other people who think like you. And once you identify those people, you won't feel alone.
Thank you. That's beautiful. Cleo, are you ready?
Yes.
Yay.
And I borrowed this from Asata. There's nothing to lose but your chains. You'll lose some, but you'll gain your full self, be authentic. And for me, that's the goal. You're authentic and being who you truly are, instead of striving to humans who have moving targets. You never quite achieve them until you're off this rock that's the earth. Yeah, nothing to lose but your chains.
Thank you. That's a beautiful, very powerful conclusion. Thank you so much. I just want to take one extra minute to say thank you so very, very much. I couldn't think of a better way to celebrate African Women's Day, also to celebrate Eyala's second birthday. So thank you so much. I'm so excited. Thank you for a fantastic conversation. Thank you, everybody who's joined us, asked questions. Please, let's stay in touch. Everybody's social media handles are in there. Please, let's continue the conversation because it's not just about today, it's about like every day. And I wanted to just, for me, what's very powerful today is that we are here in this conversation from Amwa in Morocco, Souad is in Nigeria, all the way to South Africa, and then from Ghana to Uganda and Kenya. And it's just the same, but much powerful energy that is coming to all of us African women. And so I think all of this energy coming together, that movement, that I think is going to affect that change that we're pushing for. So thank you to all of you. Thank you in particular, I'm going to say is shout out to our partner, the Enough campaign from Oxfam, who has really enabled us to do this, but also do this the feminist way. I really appreciate that support, really appreciate that. And thank you to everybody who joined. And again, thank you to all of our panelists. You are absolutely amazing, and I'm so grateful to even have the chance to be in conversation with you all. Thank you to Merilde, who is our translator, who has done the back and forth between English and French so powerfully and beautifully. I'm going to share her email address so that if you ever need a translator, don't look further. She's the one. Thank you to Engyu, who is like behind the black box where it's written flip the script, who has been amazing at all the technical things. I have no idea how they are done. Thank you so much. And again, thank you everybody. Have a great weekend. Eid Mubarak to those observing. Appreciate you so much. Thanks.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye-bye. Bye.